Great experiences build great leaders. Great leaders build great teams. This is Building Great Sales Teams.
All right, guys, welcome back to Building Great Sales Teams. Glad to have you back. I've got a special guest today. He's a former police officer turned serial entrepreneur. He owns Roof Savers, Scoop of Sunshine, and he's the host of Avoid the Confusion podcast. Kenny's a leader, motivator, husband, father, and someone who genuinely wants to see people to see what's possible if they just apply themselves. Kenny, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. A pleasure for just having an opportunity to come and talk with you again. You came on my show a few weeks back, and glad to return the favor.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it. So we have, we'll get right into it. We have a lot of roofers who listen to this show. We have a lot of roofers in our network. And so I definitely want to tap into your experience there. Do you have sales advice for roofers right now? I know in general, in business, sales are down, right? I'm getting a lot of calls, getting a lot of prospects, to help out with the sales piece of everything. What is working for you guys right now, or how are y'all maintaining?
So the thing that's still working best for us and has worked the best for us from the beginning has been our relationships, sort of with referral partners, real estate agents, insurance agents, all of that type stuff. So from the beginning, instead of putting all of our focus on selling one job, we really focus on building relationships that, people we can call referral partners. And that the work that we get from those referral partners makes up a large percentage of what we do. So the biggest advice I would have for somebody right now is just make sure you're putting the right messaging out about your brand and build relationships with people who can help you get at least more than one job per year. That should be your primary focus.
Yeah.
At the moment.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, if you have 12 referral partners and you're getting, one job a year from them, that's 12 extra jobs a year. I mean, in your business, that's like, what is that, like $200K in extra income there?
Absolutely. Yeah. It could be 200.
So who is the best referral partner for your business?
For us, it's been real estate agents. And the reason for us, so majority of our work is retail. We do some insurance. We know insurance. We make sure we understand the process because we get hit with hurricanes. We're along the coast in Alabama. So anytime that happens, we have to be able to compete with everyone else. But for the most part, we don't storm chase. We stay right here local. And majority of our work is retail. And I would say that before I mess this whole question up, give it to me one more time, because I was fixing to go off on a tangent and I don't believe it was the right one.
Well, you were saying that your real estate partners are the best partners. They're the ones that give you the most business. Yeah,
and what I was getting at with that is we also, being a retail company, we do a lot of repairs and maintenance. We have a product we use for rejuvenating roofs, and that's a big part of what we do. So because of that, we've been able to build great relationships with real estate agents, because I would say at least 80% of every real estate transaction has an issue with the roof. So if you get a product like a roof tune-up that's really good at saving those transactions for real estate agents, you may not make a lot of money today, but you do a lot of business with the same people over and over. And we've built we've sort of built a system now to where my wife Macy runs our office, and it's nothing for her to get 5 or 6 emails a day from realtors, and they're just forwarding us the roof inspection and saying, how can you help us with that? So we're basically just saying, this is what you need to do. This is how much it's going to cost. And they don't even question it anymore. So a lot of that everyday sort of redundant
consistent business
maintains us.
Yeah, it's not a brand new roof. It's not necessarily sexy, but it absolutely keeps y'all top of mind the same way a CRM would, except you're doing it in the business. And then every now and then, that it does need a roof replacement, right? And you get a full replacement, but
for sure.
Being willing to go out and do that, I guess, work that's not necessarily sexy kind of gives you that pipeline of constant referrals.
Yes. And what we've also been able to do is keep our close rate really high, like in excess of 60%. And we do a lot of that by, if we go out to a house for someone who wants a new roof, but they don't technically need a new roof, we educate them on all their options. And every now and then they do go with a cheaper option, like maybe roof rejuvenation or something like that. But I know at the end of that 5-year term, once that's up, they're going to use us for the replacement because we've already saved them money. And then the same thing with that product, we're able to, like I said, some of them do take the lesser option, but some of them, because you're given options, you're way more trustworthy. They now value what you have to say over your competition, because I'm letting you know you don't need a new roof. This is a viable option. So if they decide it's sort of better for their situation to get the new roof, we sort of come across as being more trustworthy, and we tend to sell because people like us. They like the way we offer solutions instead of trying to push for a sale for one specific product, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. I had a prospect yesterday. He was looking for a sales program overhaul, and I kind of looked at what he had already, and I was kind of impressed with it. I was like, man, you're like 50% already done. I would just fill in the rest of the 50%. And honestly, I feel like if I told you what to do, that you could knock it out. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't necessarily have to build it for you. So with
For sure.
him, I did 1/5 of my normal fee, because I was like, I know that he can knock it out. I'm just going to be consulting him, a true consultation, right? Where he goes and does the work. And so I think that's those things that, in terms of referral partners and referrals in general, it's going to get you those type of things tenfold, right?
For sure. And then there's the part of it to where, if I go out to look at a roof for someone, and in the rare instance that it doesn't need anything, I just say it doesn't need anything, that referral partner is now concrete. They're going to refer you for life, because you didn't try to sell them anything. You genuinely showed up with intent of helping and giving an honest report, even if it didn't make you any money.
Absolutely. I think those are the kind of transactions that, well, what do you expect, right? You expect somebody to go on the roof and then give you a bid of like 20 grand with no explanation, no itemization, no,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
no way for you to know that it's not just a random number. You know what I'm saying? And so you go from that to like, hey, here's a few options. I'm sure it's refreshing for a lot of people. Okay, on the lead gen side, on the marketing side, what are you guys doing right now that's working real well for you?
So leads are down across the board, I think, for everybody in this
Hmm.
industry. And for us, like I said, the thing that's working the most for us every day is the old fashioned boots on the ground sort of thing. We don't knock many doors, but as
Okay.
far as attending chamber events, BNI style groups, networking our butts off, and going, we have a lot of apartment complexes and stuff like that, checking in on those people. And then something we do a little outside of the box too, is a lot of contractors don't do, I have found, is we'll take food to our suppliers. We'll go in and
Mhm.
bring them lunch and talk with them and sit down with them, because people call those guys all the time looking for roofers, and I want to be the one that they like the most, that they refer the most. So we get a lot of
Yeah.
referrals from our suppliers and that type stuff. And then, because we're retail and we don't do a lot of insurance work, I have a ton of insurance agents in my market that refer us like crazy, and they know that they can send me out to do a honest inspection. And if there's no wind or hail damage, I just say there's no damage.
Right.
And we don't try to push claims through. And I'm not saying that anybody listening to this call does, but we all know that there are those companies that exist. And just by going out and giving an honest assessment, a lot of times you prove that you're trustworthy. And so our relationships, more than anything, that's where the bulk of our work comes from today. Other than that, a little bit of paid Google, Facebook, the normal stuff. You get leads here and there. The quality is up and down depending on the time of the year. But the fundamental ground level stuff that is something we've always been really good at, and keeps us busy for sure.
So
And
go
I was
ahead.
going to say, and because of that, the last 2 years in a row, we've won roofing contractor of the year in our market through a local newspaper that does, they put the polls out for the community and all to vote on, and we've won that 2 years in a row.
So you didn't just pay for ads and then get that, right?
No,
It was actually pulled.
that was hard. That was actually building relationships and doing a
it.
good job and standing behind your work as well. So, and majority of all of that, when you trace it back, comes to those relationships. It comes down to the relationships with the people within the community, within the market. So who sort of help you keep that brand name top of mind. That's where I get the most bang for my buck, for sure.
Yeah. So in terms of, the sales guys that you do have, and obviously you're still one of them as the owner, that's going to happen naturally, right? But the guys that are in those intentional sales positions, it sounds like you've got a few things. One, you've got relationship building. Two, you've got referral partners, right? And then three, you've got, um, networking, right? So that, all of those kind of go hand in hand. It's more phases, right? But is this something that, are you, when you hire a salesperson, are you getting an experienced salesperson already from the industry, kind of like a referral, or are you placing ads for salespeople? And then if you're doing that and you have these kind of three ways that they get their business, that it is very, obviously you got to be incredibly experienced, you got to know how to build relationships. Then are you doing that intentionally in terms of like documentation when they come in, they're being trained on this, or is it more like a one-on-one training that you do?
It's for us, it's a little more like a one-on-one training, but we do have, 30, 60, 90s built out and that
Nice.
type stuff. So I try to look at sales more like recruiting than I do hiring. I don't just want to hire anybody and put them into that position. I did that a few times in the past and it never worked out. So now I just if we get into a situation where it looks like we're going to need a new sales rep, somebody to move into that arena, then I start recruiting and I start looking for the right person. Be it, and a lot of times, a lot of that recruiting happens at those networking meetings and chamber events and that kind of stuff, because it's not rare that you meet someone there trying to grow something else and you get to talk and you realize that there's some room for the two of you to work together, for them to come make a lot of money within your business, that type thing. So I don't really run ads or ask people who they know. I sort of try to project that before it's needed and try to find the right person, plant a seed, and sort of develop someone for that role as it's needed. Now that could be right or wrong. It could be why we're still only a $3 million a year company. I don't know. But it's what's worked for me, and it's what I feel comfortable doing.
I think you're going to get your best ROI from that. I mean, there's no denying that when you attract the candidate versus place an ad for the candidate, that's going to be completely different. And a lot of that attraction marketing happens when you're recruiting, when you're networking, when you're building relationships. And so as soon as if you even put it out in the universe and somebody knows you're hiring, all of a sudden you got 3 people in your messages, because they're like, hey, I've seen you operating. I agree with what you're doing. I align with you. And I heard you were hiring. I'm in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I'll
and
tell
those
you,
are,
and I didn't mean to interrupt you. There's a little bit of a lag, but in the what I have also noticed is since I started podcasting and doing like this, coming on your show, there are a lot of people who hear this stuff, and I'll get random messages from people who don't even live here, but they've been a salesman for a roofing company. And they've always thought Alabama had beautiful beaches. And if me and my family end up down there, could you use another sales rep? So then you start sort of building a portfolio of people who are interested. I had just last week, a girl that I went to high school with reach out to me and say that her mother had fell ill. She was moving back here, and she ran a State Farm. She was a agent. She had a actual State Farm location for quite a while.
Yeah.
And she had just sold it so she could move back home, but wondered if I needed anybody on staff that had high level experience with the claims process and that kind of stuff. So once I started putting myself out there, I started getting a lot of personal messages from people wanting to know if we were looking for anybody that a role that they would fit into. So it's really easy to attract the right people lately.
Well, and then as you scale, you have a Rolodex now.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And so I don't think necessarily like scale always needs to be tied to hiring ads and turnover and all that. I mean, that's one of the things if you're starting from zero, 100%
Mhm.
it has to happen. You know, if you don't have the network built, you don't have the relationships, the authority, you haven't been setting the example in your industry, then you have to do those kind of things and be ready for that influx of people and turnover. Um, but I think if you're okay with building a little slower and like in your case the right way where all right, we're not going to step outside of this box. We're not going to do door to door. We're not going to do big, ad campaigns and stuff like that. We're going to do true relationship building, and we're going to do better business because of that. You're willing to build slower. I think I think that's going to show in your P&L. I think that's going to show in your culture. I think that's going to show in your reviews. You know what I'm saying? Which are some of the most important metrics you have.
For sure, for sure. And it's showing for us right now because leads are down. And I've got a couple friends of mine who own roofing companies that I've gotten to know here
Mhm.
locally who have called me over the last couple of weeks. And unfortunately, two of them have had to close their business. And it's just a tough time
Yeah.
that we're in, especially for us here along the coast in Alabama, because we're 3 years now removed, almost this will be 3 years in September from Hurricane Sally. And
Mhm.
anybody who's ever worked in hurricane zones, you get a bad one like that year, usually around year 3 and 4 following, it's almost dead because all the roofs have
Yeah.
been replaced. The last few that didn't get replaced, you still did a little bit of work, but this is sort of that dead period for us,
Mhm.
which is why I'm glad I spent so much time early on the relationships and the networking and all of that, because we still have a steady flow of projects that are keeping us busy. We're profitable. We're not at risk of going out of business, and we don't,
Yeah.
because the paid stuff isn't working as well now as it was a year ago.
Right. Your customer acquisition cost is going up, so that pipeline's even more important now.
Yeah.
Okay, let's pivot a little bit and let's talk about the fact that you were a former police officer. From what you told me, you were living paycheck to paycheck, and you were starting your businesses back then. What changed for you to get to where you are now? What kind of growth had to happen there?
Man, oh, the only thing that changed for me during that time is I had to get serious. And the reason I say I had to get serious is because when I started this company, it cost me a little over $30,000 to open the doors day
Mm.
one, and I didn't have that kind of money. We had about $15,000 cash, and I was going to put the rest on credit cards. My father-in-law convinced me that that was a bad idea, just in case things didn't work out. Just on the off chance that things didn't work out, he wanted me to have. Um, he didn't want me and my wife to be faced with all that, I guess, interest and everything else that comes
Yeah.
along with putting money on credit cards.
Yeah.
So he loaned me $15,000 and said, "Don't put it
Wow.
on credit card, just pay me back." So the fact that he loaned me the money was the only thing that changed for me in this business, other than any other business. It's just when it got hard, couldn't quit because I owed him 15 grand, so I had no choice. And so I kept
Yeah.
telling myself, I'm going to figure this out. I'll make the money back, pay her dead back. And then if we don't want to keep doing it, we can stop then. But guess what? By the time we did enough work to earn the money to pay him back, it wasn't
Mhm.
as hard to get new business then because we were starting to figure some things out. So, and then it was the next big thing that had to happen was a mindset shift. Once I started to realize what was actually possible and believe in myself, then I kind of feel like we've become sort of unstoppable. We're not where we want to be, but I'm not. I don't fear any of that. I'm not scared of any of that now. And finally, I feel like I deserve everything we're working for. It took me a long time to get there too.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. We think of these things like debt, like these traumatic experiences that we go through, or whatever the case is. We think of them as these negative things, but a lot of times they're the catalyst for what gets us to where we are now. You know,
For sure.
and we talked about that on your podcast in great detail about how because of my background and everything, I had this chip on my shoulder, and it taught me work ethic basically to where that was my driver.
Mhm.
And so in your case, it was not owing your father-in-law money, and I've been there before too. We had used to have to factor our payroll. and he was factoring some of our payroll for a little bit, and then all of a sudden, we weren't able to pay it, and I owed him outright for like 6 weeks, and I was just like miserable for 6 weeks until I got him paid back. And
Yeah.
so I can definitely relate to that for sure. So you've had all this experience, being a serial entrepreneur. You've got a few businesses that are working really well right now, and you're hosting the podcast. You've decided to make the leap into coaching now. You know, why coaching, and also, why the home that you found at WinRate as well.
WinRate is a great place. The reason I chose WinRate just because of Mike Claudio. So I
Hmm.
saw him spoke at an event that I was paying to be at, looking for a coach. I was looking
Hmm.
somewhere else for a coach. Mike happened to be one of the guest speakers, and I texted my wife. This was a couple of years ago, and I said, I think I found my guy. I just resonated with Mike. I like Mike, so I
Yeah.
reached out to him after the event. I saw him sitting outside. And I said, "Hey man, have you ever done any business coaching?" And he laughed. And he said, "That's
And I
actually."
laugh because I know Mike.
Yeah, he said that his laugh was just like that. I didn't know him. I
Yeah.
didn't realize that there were people who followed him on YouTube and all that. I didn't
Yeah.
know who he was. It was my first time seeing him. And so I asked him if he did any business coaching, and he laughed and said, "Well, that's what I do." And so I hired him, and we worked together for a year and a half. And um, I had lost a great deal of money before me and Mike started working together because I didn't know how to be a business owner. And
Yeah.
once we started working together and I started figuring all that stuff out, just staying on as a paid client, and then coming into this year, he reached out to me and asked me if I would like to take on a few clients and help
Hmm.
people the same way he had helped me a couple of years ago. And I knew I couldn't have done it without him, so I said, absolutely, if there's a chance I can be that help for someone, I would love to do that.
No, that's fantastic. And when I think about what I'm doing now, and I'm consulting in a specific niche. I'm not really business consult or business coaching, right? But it happens all the time. You're in these mastermind groups, you're on these calls, and you end up pouring into someone all of a sudden because you've gone deep on a certain strategy or a certain thing that's worked for your business, and you realize, oh, I was just coaching. You kind of look back at it and you realize that, hey, I had. And the way I look at it is a ladder. Everybody looks at it as like you've got the person at the top, and now they're validated, and there's no imposter syndrome, and they should be coaching, right? But you've got all these ladders in between. What I'm
Mhm.
saying? And you can look at them as gross dollar amounts, you can look at them as kind of amount of experience, you could look at them as your IQ, but there's a bunch of ladders in there that if you're even just one rung above somebody, you know there is a justification in you coaching them, and it may not always be for money, but when you're in a system like Mike's, the system inside and out. You've been in it for what, 3 years now, it sounds like, or
Little
over
over
2 years.
two.
Yeah, over 2 years, like, you know how to execute that system, and as long as you're executing within that model, I think you can kind of compress time, you can compress the experiences, and you can compress any learning curve your client has now.
Yeah, and a good thing about WinRate Consulting is the amount of coaches that they have and the amount of people that are on that staff that have built big business and coach people into very big businesses,
Hmm.
which is important to factor in as well. And having access to that entire team of people, because the things where I did feel a little insecure, like maybe I shouldn't be coaching people, a lot
Right.
of that's imposter syndrome. Some of it's most likely valid. I think we all have areas where we're weak. And if you're
Yeah.
going to be a coach, you don't like knowing you have weak areas, right? So
Right.
going into it, I felt like there were some areas I was probably weak and didn't belong to be on the team. But at the same time, I knew I had access to 9 other amazing human
Hmm.
beings that could 100% get any question that a client of mine ever had answered. I felt comfortable doing the role within the organization because I
Yeah.
knew ultimately the team would not let someone fail, and they certainly wouldn't let me fail as a coach. And ironically, nothing has come up all year that I didn't have experience with or that I couldn't help
Right.
somebody through. So in taking that leap, thinking I wasn't ready, I found out there's really, not saying I'm the best out there, but there's nothing to
Right.
be fearful of everybody's problems in business, typically they're dealing with some of the same stuff that you're dealing with. And a lot of times you're not giving someone the answer to a problem other than a different set of eyes and a different perspective. And once I started to understand that, I was like, man, I have a lot more experience than I'm giving myself credit for. And plus I have a great team of people who won't let me fail.
Yeah, I think there's different parts to coaching, but I think, I would say like 20% is give a shit. You know what I'm saying? Like you actually care about your client. Another 20% is maybe accountability. Another 20% is experience, and then 20% is knowledge, and then so on and so forth. I mean, it's just a mix of all these things, but experience in that particular problem is not everything, and for me, what I've noticed is, when I'm in my zone of genius, sure, it's all experience, it's all, coming from a place of application, but a lot of times I'm coming from a place of problem solving, you know,
Mhm.
where it's like you have a problem. I know I've seen these other three things work because the groups I'm in or the businesses I've worked with in the past or whatever the case is. Even if it's outside of my scope, I'll still try and fill those voids and bring more value to my client outside of just the scope of work that we're working on. You know what I'm saying? And so I think it really is, a lot of it is about giving a shit, you know,
Yeah,
and the accountability piece. I feel like if you have those two things, you got 80% of coaching covered, you know, because
you do.
that's what I'm
And then,
really showing up for. I mean,
and I'll tell you, there are some people who are really successful in business that I have met that aren't that good at
oh
problem
yeah.
solving. And then there are some people that have met that are excellent in business
Uh-huh.
because they're only good at problem solving.
Yeah.
Like they're amazing problem solvers. So what I have learned is if I'm going to hire a coach, I like for it to be somebody who thinks outside of the box and is really good at solving problems anyway. That's what makes most really good entrepreneurs, in my opinion, really good entrepreneurs. So
Yeah.
if you looking for somebody to coach you, find somebody who does think different than you, who does
Yeah.
think outside of the box, because that's how, in my opinion, some of the biggest advances we've made in business have been when we've done some things a little unorthodox, a little outside of the box. Look at
Yeah.
for a different way to attack something, a different angle, a different way to get ahead. So I don't necessarily believe that. I would say the experience. Like I don't think you need to go look for a business coach who's on the business for 20 years. If you can find someone who built an incredibly successful business in 5 years by putting out a ton of fires and solving problems, that may be a good person to reach out
Yeah.
um, to hire. So I don't think when it comes to finding a coach or hiring a coach or being a coach that there's any right or wrong way, or that there's any. The thing is, I see a lot of these coaches, and I hate to even say coach and call myself a coach because I've built sort of a negative, I guess, picture of what that is in my mind. But there are a lot of, I
Not
see
for
a lot of,
I would say it's not negative for the people that get it. And your
yes,
clients, your prospective clients, your avatar
for,
that you're after, they
for
get it.
sure. But what I see
Yeah.
is a lot of people who are business coaches who are out there talking bad about this coach, and this guy doesn't do this. This guy never even owned the business. And, and I start to look at all that stuff that's going on, and I get
Yeah.
to think, well, if he never owned a business, what's his coaching track record look like? What kind of success have his clients had? So if somebody's been coaching for 10 years, but they've never owned a business, that coaching organization, even if it's just him, that is a
Mhm.
business. How successful is he? How successful has he been at making his clients successful? I'm just saying, just because somebody never owned a business, that doesn't disqualify them as being someone capable of giving you advice. And this is what I try to tell everybody all the time. A lot of
Mhm.
people will go to like an uncle when they first open a business. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm thinking about doing this. And he's like, that'll never work. And they're like, damn, I didn't think about that. So they just walk away and never even pursue that. So there are
Yeah.
people who you would think are not qualified to give advice that are. And then you're probably going to take a lot of advice from people who aren't qualified to give it. So I just, when it comes to coaching or mentors or any of that, just look at what somebody's done, what they've accomplished. And if you feel comfortable, all you're doing is hiring another set of eyes, a different
Mhm.
perspective. in your business. Hopefully see something that you miss, catch it before you do, or help you correct the ship if you go off course a little bit. And a lot of times that happens. Some of these coaches out there may have never owned a business, but they've coached so many clients that they got really good at helping people. For example, if it's in home services, solving those problems, that don't disqualify this guy because he didn't own a business. He may have helped 20 people through this exact problem, and he knows how to get you there quicker than anybody else. And he knows that because he's helped 15 people do it, not because he had a business and may or may not have experienced it himself.
Which in my mind actually qualifies you more. Because the thing successful business owners have a hard time doing is taking themselves out of the situation. And it happens all the time. Like, I'm working with a client right now, and his favorite thing to say is, we shouldn't have to create an SOP. We shouldn't have to create training. They should just know. And I laugh every time I hear it. And he's half being sarcastic when he says it, but he knows what he's realizing now. And what I'm trying to help him understand is, he's a brilliant salesperson, and he's brilliant with numbers. And these are two things that don't exist in an SOP in his business, or a script, or a sales program, or any of that stuff. And I'm like, you can't just pull up somebody next to you and expect them to absorb everything that you're good at. You know what I mean? That's not how it works, right? And so that happens a lot with, those very successful business owners that you talk about. Well, they're very successful because they have these amazing talents that they haven't been able to. They hit the ceiling because they haven't been able to scale those talents. You can't scale talent, but what you can do is systemize it, create an SOP, create a process, or whatever the case is, and then have your team execute on that. And maybe they'll do it 50, 60% as good as you can. Doesn't mean you go and find new people. That means you just have to operate at a different conversion rate now, And so before I get on that tangent, I'll just come back to you and ask you, all right, so you've got your businesses rolling, you know what I'm saying? And you got the podcast going, you're making an impact there now. What else besides coaching are you excited about right now? What's going on in your life or in your business that you're incredibly excited about?
Man, I'll tell you, we have a big family. Me and my wife have 5 kids. We have a 4-year-old son who is autistic, and something about the water sort of brings out the best in him. He opens up a lot. So we spend a lot of time on the water, so much so that me and my 14-year-old son, we just got a couple metal detectors, and we've been going to the beach a lot in the afternoon and finding coins and rings and that kind of stuff. So
that's awesome.
I'm having a lot of fun doing that with him. He's staying out of trouble. And then me and my oldest son golf quite a bit. And see, and this is something I've done a lot with my roofing company too, that it didn't necessarily help me with sales, but it's helped me with culture. So we have a local golf course, and I just did a gutter job for them 2 weeks ago. And instead of charging them for it, the job cost me, my actual cost to do it was about $3,500, but I bartered, I swapped with them for $16,000 worth of corporate golf membership there for 2 years. So me, my production manager, my operations manager, my sons, my wife, I got us all on a corporate membership at the golf course. So
nice.
It's our unlimited golf, unlimited carts, unlimited range balls, all that, even some food credits in the clubhouse, right? So
nice.
I bartered that and swapped with that so I could use it to build culture. But because of that, that's part of what we have going on right now that we're having a lot of fun doing. We're playing a lot more golf than we used to because we're members at the country club now, which I never thought I'd
That's
say.
Fantastic, man. That's $12,000. It's a $12,500 markup. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's fantastic.
Good. It was good.
Absolutely.
And then the other business you spoke on here about a couple times, Scoop of Sunshine. The guy, I went to a house, and after Hurricane Sally, the guy didn't have enough money to pay for the roof, and he had a horrible insurance policy, ACV policy, and I worked him out a deal on that roof and traded him for all the ice cream equipment he had in his garage. And a month later, I had that business open. That business alone netted us about $50,000 this summer in a 90-day period. So I traded the roof. It cost me about $9,000 for that. So I do a lot of. People don't look at that as sales, but it really is, in my opinion. If I go out and I see something that I can barter, if I own the business, you can pay me however you want. So why would I not take corporate memberships and do a small gutter job. Why would I not take the opportunity to open I have a whole nother family-owned business that my teenage kids run during the summer that makes us a lot of money off of one roof. So I think outside of the box and help clients hire me as well, if you will.
Absolutely. I think that's an evolution of sales is bartering. You know what I'm saying? And you create so much opportunity and in your case benefits and culture from being able to do that. That's fantastic. All right, brother. Last question that I got, and legacy means a lot of different things to a lot of people. So my last question is, what legacy do you want to leave behind?
Man, that's a tough one for me. I just want people, if my name comes up after I'm long gone, I want people just to remember who I was and what I stood for, and I was somebody that could be trusted. I was somebody honest. More than anything, I spent over a decade in law enforcement trying to build that legacy, and ended up owning a roofing company. And so now we do our best to give back to the community. I do my best to donate to those police departments that I used to work with, for shop with a cop at Christmas, that type of stuff. I just want to be somebody who's remembered for doing something good, for leaving the world a little better than I found it. That's my end goal.
I love it, brother. And you can always measure sincerity by the way that you do business. You know what I'm saying? And the way that you're talking about doing business through relationships, through referral partners, basically doing business on your reputation versus doing business on a transaction that you created through advertising or something like that. I think that really says that you're executing what you're talking about right now. So I have no doubt in my mind that you will leave that kind of legacy.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
All right, brother. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show, giving us a bunch of value in roofing, in kind of your backstory and everything, and then of course, in that legacy that you want to leave behind, as well as recruiting and all that good stuff. Thank you so much.
Awesome, man. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, let's get building.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Building Great Sales Teams. We appreciate it. Be sure to execute on everything that you just heard, and let's get building. Before we sign off, we'd like to invite you to join our Brickyard community. Head on over to jointhebrickyard.com. Again, that's jointhebrickyard.com, or click the link in the description to find out more.